The Montana rain fell in sheets across the valley, turning the dirt roads to mud and sending rivulets cascading down the sloping pastures of Blackbird Ranch. Inside the weathered farmhouse, Sophia Mitchell pulled her fleece tighter around her shoulders and glanced at the old grandfather clock in the corner. Midnight. A sharp, insistent barking cut through the drumming of rain on the roof. Timber, her aging cattle dog, never sounded that alarm unless something more, or someone was out there. "What is it, boy?" Sophia murmured, reaching for the rifle that stood sentinel by the back door. She slipped into her rain boots, grabbed a flashlight from the drawer, and ventured out into the deluge. The old stable loomed ahead, its silhouette barely visible through the curtain of rain. Timber growled low, ears alert, his attention fixed on something near the corral. Sophia's heart hammered against her ribs as she swept the flashlight beam across the darkness. That's when she saw him. A man huddled against the stable wall, drenched to the bone, clothes torn and muddied. One leg was stretched out awkwardly, and even in the dim light, she could see the dark stains spreading below his knee. He raised a trembling hand as the light hit his face. "I'm not looking for trouble," he rasped, his voice barely audible above the storm. "Just needed shelter from the rain. I'll be gone by morning." Sophia kept the rifle steady, though her hands shook slightly. "Who are you? What are you doing on my property?" The stranger shifted, wincing with the effort. The movement brought his face into the flashlight's glow, strong jaw covered in several days' stubble, rainwater dripping from a weather-worn cowboy hat. But it was his eyes that gave her pause, clear blue, pained, yet somehow earnest. "Name's Ethan," he said. "Ethan Warner. I've got nowhere else to go right now. Just need to rest for the night." Sophia hesitated, every instinct screaming caution. Her father, asleep in the house with one eye open as usual, would tell her to call Sheriff Reeves immediately. But something in the man's eyes, a weariness that went beyond physical exhaustion, made her pause. She made a decision that felt both reckless and right. "You can stay in the stable," she said firmly, not lowering the rifle. "But if you try anything at all, I'll put a hole in you big enough to see the mountains through." The corner of Ethan's mouth twitched in what might have been a smile, if not for the pain etched across his features. "Understood, ma'am." She gestured toward the stable doors. "There's clean hay in the back stall and an old blanket hanging in the tack room. Get some rest and be gone by sunrise." He nodded, limping through the doors. Sophia followed, watching his every move. Once inside, he sank into the hay with a barely suppressed groan of relief. Sophia turned to leave, but paused at his quiet voice. "Thank you for this. I mean it." She looked back, face impassive. "Don't make me regret it." When she returned to the house, peeling off her soaked jacket, she turned to find her father standing in the hallway doorway. Samuel Mitchell's weathered face was set in stone, arms crossed over his chest. "You want to tell me who's sleeping in our stable? Or should I find out myself?" Sophia's stomach dropped. "It's a man, Dad. He's hurt. Looked like he'd been through hell and back. He just needed somewhere dry." Samuel narrowed his eyes. "Could be one of those rustlers from the Silver Creek gang. Could be worse." "I know," she conceded, "but I saw something in him. He's not here to steal. He's running from something." Samuel exhaled hard, shaking his head. "You've got your mother's soft heart, girl. That'll get you hurt someday." Sophia met his gaze steadily. "Maybe, but not tonight." Her father held her gaze a moment longer, then gave a gruff nod and retreated down the hall. Sophia returned to her room, changed into dry clothes, and lay down. But sleep eluded her. Outside, the storm gradually subsided to a gentle patter. In the stable, a stranger with haunted eyes slept among her horses, and Sophia couldn't shake the feeling that her life had just shifted course in ways she couldn't yet understand. Dawn spread golden fingers across the eastern sky, turning the rain-soaked fields into a sea of diamonds. Sophia stood on the porch with a steaming mug of coffee, her gaze fixed on the stable. The creak of the screen door announced her father's presence. Samuel stepped out, binoculars hanging around his neck, his expression hovering between concern and skepticism. "Let's go see what kind of trouble you've invited home," he muttered, heading down the muddy path. Sophia followed, her boots leaving deep imprints in the softened earth. Inside the stable, the familiar scent of hay and horses greeted them, along with the soft sounds of movement. Ethan was awake. He stood in the far stall, shirtless, his wound freshly wrapped with strips torn from his own shirt. Despite his injury, he was gently brushing down Willow, a skittish Appaloosa mare that usually avoided strangers. The horse stood peacefully under his touch, occasionally nuzzling his shoulder. Samuel stopped short. "Well, I'll be damned." Ethan looked up, wariness in his eyes. "Morning. Hope I didn't overstep." The spotted mare seemed to favor her left front leg. "Just wanted to help." Samuel studied him carefully. "Are you a veterinarian?" "No, sir," Ethan replied. "But I grew up with horses. They were my whole childhood." Samuel said nothing, his gaze shifting from the mare's carefully wrapped leg to Ethan's own bandaged wound. There was something unexpectedly competent about this supposed drifter. Sophia stepped forward. "He's not causing any harm, Dad." Samuel shot her a look, but remained silent. Ethan leaned against the stall door, clearly trying not to put weight on his injured leg. "I'll be moving on soon. Just need to rest the leg another day or so, if that offer still stands." Sophia nodded. "It does. And if you want to earn your keep, we've got a fence that needs mending along the east pasture." Samuel raised an eyebrow. "You sure that's wise?" Giving him tools. Ethan looked directly at him. "You think I'd drag myself here through the mud to steal some fence wire and a hammer?" Samuel held his gaze for a long moment. Then, with a noncommittal grunt, he turned and walked out. Sophia lingered. "You always have that touch with horses." Ethan's expression softened. "Sometimes I think they understand me better than people do." She studied him thoughtfully. Even injured and disheveled, there was something solid about him, a quiet strength that seemed at odds with his circumstances. She nodded once and left to prepare some breakfast. By mid-afternoon, Ethan was outside, his limp noticeable but not debilitating, working steadily on replacing broken fence posts. Sophia watched from the porch, curiosity mingled with caution. Later, she brought him a mason jar of iced tea, condensation beating on the glass in the warm afternoon sun. "Thought you might be thirsty," she offered. He accepted it with a small smile. "Thank you, ma'am." "Sophia," she corrected. "Call me Sophia." "Sophia," he repeated, as if testing how the name felt. He sipped the tea slowly, his eyes scanning the horizon. The mountains rose in the distance, their peaks still capped with snow despite the late spring warmth. "You have family somewhere?" she asked carefully. He hesitated before answering. "I had an uncle once. Parents passed years ago." "Brothers? Sisters?" "A brother," he said, his voice tightening. "That's complicated." Sophia didn't push. "You're from Idaho, aren't you? I can hear it in your accent." He nodded. "Had land there. Good land. But sometimes the people closest to you are the ones you should trust least." Something in his tone darkened. She let the silence settle between them. "Was it your brother who hurt you?" she finally asked. Ethan looked away, jaw clenched. "Let's just say he's living comfortably off things that weren't his to take." Sophia swallowed. "You're not just some drifter, are you?" He met her eyes. "No, ma'am. I'm not." She nodded slowly. "The mare you helped this morning, she was my mother's. She passed 4 years ago. No one's been able to touch that horse since, but she let you." Ethan didn't respond, but his eyes revealed understanding. Just then, Timber came trotting up, something clutched in his mouth, a weathered, folded document protected by a waxed canvas covering. Sophia knelt and took it from the dog's mouth. Inside was a creased map showing property lines, some professionally drawn, others added by hand. One parcel caught her attention, labeled Warner Homestead, 2,175 acres, in fading ink. She glanced up at Ethan. "Your name is Ethan Warner?" His expression tightened, as if she'd unexpectedly touched a wound. "Yes." Sophia held his gaze steadily. "If you're running from something, this might not be the right place. This ranch, this life, it doesn't have room for ghosts." He looked down at the map in her hands. "Maybe," he said quietly, "or maybe it's where ghosts come to remember what it means to be alive." The days fell into a natural rhythm. Sunrise chores, afternoon work, evenings of quiet exhaustion. Ethan stayed. Samuel watched him carefully, but said little. Sophia noticed her father checking Ethan's repair work more than once, his expression unreadable. Ethan rose before dawn each day, working steadily despite his healing leg. Sophia observed how he tested wood with experienced hands, spoke to horses in low, reassuring tones, and listened more than he spoke. One afternoon, dark clouds gathered over the ridge, bringing the scent of pine and coming rain. Sophia struggled with thunder, a young gelding who had spooked at something and refused to be led back to the corral. "He's never like this," she muttered, trying to maintain her grip on the rope. Ethan appeared beside her, calm and steady. "May I?" She stepped back, and he approached the nervous horse with slow, deliberate movements, murmuring words too soft for her to catch. His hand moved in gentle, sweeping strokes along the animal's trembling flank until gradually the horse settled. You talk to them like they're people, Sophia said quietly. They are, in their way, Ethan replied. They remember kindness and cruelty. They learn to trust slowly, just like us. He handed her the lead rope, their fingers brushing. Neither pulled away immediately. That night, a storm knocked out the power. Sophia lit oil lamps in the kitchen, their warm glow pushing back the shadows. She found an old radio that ran on batteries and tuned it to a country station. A gentle melody filled the room, one her mother used to hum while making bread. A soft knock at the door surprised her. Ethan stood there, hat in hand, clothes relatively clean, uncertainty in his eyes. Saw the lights were out, he said simply. I found this old radio, she replied. Still works. He smiled faintly. My grandmother used to play the radio on Sunday afternoons. Always the gospel hour. Do you want to come in? She asked. He hesitated, then stepped inside. They sat at the kitchen table, lamplight between them, music playing softly. Ethan looked around the room. This place feels like something from a story, something real in a world that's mostly pretend. That might be the nicest thing anyone's ever said about our old ranch, Sophia replied. He smiled, a genuine smile that transformed his face. Comfortable silence settled between them as the music played on. Sophia turned the volume up slightly. Would you dance? She asked suddenly. Ethan blinked. With you? No. With Timber, she teased, smiling. He stood carefully. If I step on your toes, blame it on the bad leg. In the living room, surrounded by family photographs and the comforting shadows of familiar things, she took his hand. He placed his palm gently against her back, and they began to sway. You're full of secrets, Ethan Warner, she whispered. So are you? Sophia Mitchell. She looked up at him. I haven't danced since my mother's last birthday. I haven't danced since my wedding, he said softly. Before everything fell apart, for the span of a single country ballad, they forgot the fences that needed mending, the past that needed healing. They moved together in a house that smelled of pine and coffee, where hope felt possible again. When the song ended, he stepped back, released her hand, nodded once, and walked out into the night. Sophia stood there, her hands still warm, certain this wasn't an ending but a beginning. The morning sun fought through scattered clouds, painting long golden rays across Blackbird Ranch. Sophia was in the barn when Timber's warning bark sent her hurrying outside. A gleaming black truck was rolling down the driveway, dust billowing behind it. Samuel was already on the porch, rifle visible but not raised. 3 men emerged from the vehicle. The one who stepped forward was lean and sharp-featured, wearing an expensive shirt that looked absurdly out of place on a ranch. His boots were spotless, his smile practiced and cold. He pushed designer sunglasses onto his head and surveyed the property with calculating eyes. Morning, he said smoothly, voice like oil on water. Beautiful place you've got here. I'm looking for someone named Ethan Warner. Heard he might be in these parts. Samuel's expression hardened. Why? The man gave a smile that didn't touch his eyes. Family business. Some unfortunate legal misunderstandings. Just trying to clear things up. Sophia's stomach tightened. She glanced toward the barn, willing Ethan to stay out of sight. What's your name? Samuel demanded, his grip shifting on the rifle. Liam. Liam Warner. The man's gaze swung to Sophia. And you must be Sophia. I've heard you've been quite hospitable to my brother. Very hospitable. But Ethan's not exactly the man he pretends to be. He's been running from more than family squabbles. There are people back in Idaho with some serious questions for him. I'm just trying to bring him home so we can settle things properly. Samuel's eyes narrowed. And what kind of man brings muscle to a conversation about family matters? Liam chuckled. Let's not complicate this. I'm offering a simple solution. But if Ethan's hiding here, things could get messy, harboring a fugitive, obstruction. I'd hate to involve the county sheriff. I came here out of respect. Sophia stepped forward. He's not here. Liam tilted his head. Is that so? Even if he were, Samuel interjected, you'd have no claim on him. Not on my land. A flicker of annoyance crossed Liam's face. Well, I think we'll stay in the area a few days. I'll give you some time to reconsider. Meanwhile, I'd keep a close eye on your livestock. It's amazing how many accidents can happen in such an isolated place. Sophia's jaw clenched. Is that a threat? Just neighborly advice. Without another word, Liam and his men returned to the truck and drove away, tires throwing dirt into the air like a challenge. That evening, Samuel sat cleaning his shotgun on the front porch. Sophia stood beside him, arms wrapped around herself. You think he'll come back? She asked. Samuel didn't look up. He already has. That was just the opening move. Next time will be different. I lied to him, she said quietly. Ethan's in the bunkhouse. He stayed nearby in case we needed help. Samuel nodded slowly. I figure as much. He set the shotgun aside. You trust him? Sophia hesitated, then answered with certainty. Yes. I do. Samuel exhaled heavily. Then God help us all if you're wrong. That man's bringing a storm to our doorstep. Later, Sophia found Ethan in the bunkhouse. He sat on the edge of a cot, shirt off, wound looking better, staring at something in his hands, a photograph. He quickly tucked it away as she entered. They found us, she said simply. I knew they would eventually. She sat beside him. Why didn't you tell me your brother was looking for you? Because he wants what he's always wanted, what never belonged to him. Ethan's voice was tight with controlled anger. The land. He nodded. My grandfather's homestead. He left it to me, not Liam. Liam tried to contest the will, then tried to have me declared mentally unstable when that failed. Made me look dangerous, volatile. Her breath caught. Can he do that? Not if I fight. But fighting's hard when you're alone. Sophia reached for his hand. You're not. He looked at her, really looked, and for a moment his carefully maintained walls cracked. I can leave, he said softly, if I'm putting you in danger. You're not going anywhere, she interrupted firmly. Not until we know what we're dealing with. Outside, the wind picked up. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled. The confrontation had begun. The shot came at midnight, cracking through the stillness like lightning. Sophia bolted upright, heart pounding. Timber barked once, then went silent, a warning. A second shot followed, closer this time. Then, shouting, the sound of struggle. She grabbed the rifle by her bed and raced barefoot toward the bunkhouse, terror giving her speed. The door hung open, lamplight spilling onto the ground. Inside, Ethan was on the floor, blood trickling from his temple. 3 shadows loomed over him. 2 of Liam's men and another she didn't recognize. The third man had a boot pressed against Ethan's chest. Should have kept running, Warner, the stranger snarled. This land's worth more than your life. Before Sophia could raise her weapon, another shot thundered through the night, not from her gun. One of the men dropped, clutching his shoulder, screaming in pain. The other spun around in confusion. Samuel Mitchell stepped from the shadows, rifle steady, eyes cold as winter. You have exactly 3 seconds to get off my property, he said, voice dangerously calm. Or, I swear to God, the next one goes through your heart. The men hesitated just long enough for him to begin counting. 1. They fled, dragging their wounded companion between them, cursing and stumbling in the dark. Sophia dropped to her knees beside Ethan. Are you hurt? I'm all right, he gasped, wincing. Head's harder than it looks. Samuel entered slowly, rifle still ready. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he crouched beside Ethan and pulled a handkerchief from his pocket. Hold still, he instructed, pressing the cloth gently against Ethan's bleeding temple. Sophia looked at her father in astonishment. Samuel caught her gaze briefly, then turned back to Ethan. I knew Liam was trouble, but hiring thugs to beat you unconscious on my property, that crosses a line. Ethan gave a pained laugh. You came for me. Don't get sentimental, Samuel grunted. You were about 5 seconds from getting your skull cracked open. He sat back on his heels with a heavy sigh. You should have told me who you really were. I didn't think you'd believe me. You're right, I wouldn't have. Samuel stood, wincing as his knees popped. But I've watched you work, seen how you handled those horses. Noticed how my daughter looks at you. Sophia blinked. Dad. Samuel held up a hand. I'm not blind, Sophia. And I'm not the kind of man who holds someone's ghost against them. He looked down at Ethan. That land Liam's trying to steal from you. It's legally yours? Ethan nodded. Every acre. My grandfather's legacy. I have the deed. I just didn't have anywhere safe to fight for it from. Samuel rubbed his chin thoughtfully. Maybe now you do. Later, the 3 of them sat at the kitchen table. Ethan's wound was cleaned and bandaged, Sophia's hands steadier now as she poured coffee. The farmhouse was quiet, doors locked, windows secured. Samuel studied Ethan with new consideration. I've got a friend in Bozeman, he said. Retired judge. Used to handle land disputes back when people fought over water rights. If you've got proper documentation, he'll know how to make it ironclad. Ethan looked up in surprise. You'd do that for me? Samuel took a sip of coffee. I'd do it for the man who bled in my bunkhouse and didn't pull a gun when he could have. Takes either courage or stupidity. Either way, I can respect it. Sophia's eyes met Ethan's across the table. Something fundamental had shifted between them all. Samuel stood, stretching his back. But if you two are going to keep looking at each other like love-struck teenagers, for God's sake, don't do it while I'm trying to drink my coffee. With that, he left the room. Ethan raised an eyebrow. Was that his blessing? Sophia smiled, warmth spreading through her chest. That was him saying he trusts you. Coming from my father, that's rarer than snow in July. Ethan exhaled slowly. For the first time since his arrival, he looked like a man who'd found solid ground after too long adrift. The next morning dawned clear and bright, with a stillness that follows only after storms. Sophia stood outside the barn, watching Ethan saddle one of their gentler horses. You should still be resting, she said softly. Ethan adjusted the stirrup, testing it with a gentle tug. I need to go to Bozeman. Your father's judge friend agreed to meet. Sophia nodded, biting her lower lip. You sure you want to do this? He looked at her, his gaze steady. I'm not just sure. I'm ready. The drive to Bozeman took nearly 3 hours. Samuel drove, with Ethan beside him. Sophia sat in the back with a folder on her lap containing Ethan's original deed, water-stained but intact, with Ethan J. Warner written in bold black ink. They arrived at a modest office tucked between a coffee shop and a bookstore. Inside, a silver-haired man with kind eyes and a cane greeted them. Samuel, he said, shaking his old friend's hand. Finally bringing me something interesting. Samuel nodded toward Ethan. This is the last honest Warner standing. He's got 2,000 acres and a damn good reason to give it away. Ethan stepped forward, resolve evident in his stance. I don't want to fight Liam anymore. I just want that land to be something better than a battlefield. The judge's brow furrowed. And you want to sign it over to her? He gestured toward Sophia. She blinked in surprise. Me? Ethan nodded. You took me in when I was broken and bleeding. You gave me work when you had every reason to turn me away. You looked at me and saw a man, not a fugitive. Sophia shook her head. Ethan, I can't accept that. That land is your heritage. No, he said gently. It was my burden, but it could be your future. Samuel watched them both, then cleared his throat. You're young and stubborn, but you're not fools. If he wants to give it, and you want to make something good of it, let's do it right. The judge sat them down and brought out fresh documents. We'll draft a transfer with conditions. You're not just handing over property. You're creating a trust. I know, Ethan said quietly. That's why I'm here. An hour later, standing in the parking lot behind the law office, Sophia stared down at papers now bearing her name. I don't know what to say, she whispered. Then don't say anything, Ethan replied. Just build something with it. She stepped closer, searching his face. You really don't want to go back, do you? I don't have anything to go back to. He paused, then met her gaze directly. But if you're asking if I want to stay, her breath caught. I do, he finished simply. She hesitated only briefly before reaching out to take his hand. Then stay. That night, back at the ranch, Samuel poured 3 glasses of his prized bourbon, a ritual he reserved for truly significant occasions. To new beginnings, Samuel said, raising his glass. To peace, Ethan added. Sophia lifted hers. To build something that lasts. They clinked glasses, the soft sound like a promise. Later, as stars appeared across the vast Montana sky, Sophia and Ethan sat on the porch, the comfortable silence of people who no longer needed to fill every moment with words. You know, Ethan said finally, you could have said no. Sophia smiled without looking at him. And you could have kept running. But we didn't. He turned to her. Why? Because, she said, resting her head lightly on his shoulder, for the first time in a very long time, something just feels right. And beneath that endless sky, they sat in silence. No more words needed. Some truths are better felt than spoken. 3 days after the deed was signed, Liam Warner returned, this time in a gleaming new SUV with legal papers in hand and arrogance in his stride. Sophia spotted him through the kitchen window and stepped outside. Samuel right behind her, face set like granite. Liam swung out of the driver's seat, his smile wide and venomous. Well, he drawled, been busy, little brother. Heard you've been playing philanthropist, giving away land like party favors. Ethan emerged from the barn, walking with steady confidence, no trace of a limp now. It's not playing, Liam. It's finished. The land isn't mine anymore. Liam raised an eyebrow. You're right, it's not. Because I've got a court order here. He waved a document. Temporary injunction filed yesterday, challenging the validity of your ownership based on, what was the legal phrase? Mental duress and financial incompetence. Sound familiar? Sophia stepped forward. He signed the land to me voluntarily, with legal witnesses. You have no grounds. Liam laughed. Sweetheart, you think a form signed in some backwater town stands up against real lawyers? That backwater judge, Samuel interjected, served on the state Supreme Court for 2 decades. He faxed your injunction to the county recorder this morning, where it was rejected with prejudice. Liam's smile faltered. You think this is over? Ethan moved closer, eyes locked on his brother's. You made one mistake, Liam. You thought I was still alone. He gestured to Sophia and Samuel to the papers already filed with the county. I've got witnesses, sworn affidavits, plus statements from 2 former ranch hands saying you forged documents. You want to keep digging? You'll only bury yourself deeper. Liam's face darkened with rage. You've always been the weak one. No, Ethan said evenly. I was just patient. For a long moment, no one moved. The wind stirred dust between them. Liam stepped back. Enjoy your victory. But remember, I'm not done. Samuel raised his rifle, not pointing it, just holding it visibly across his arms. For you, he said calmly. It is. Liam hesitated, then turned and climbed back into his SUV. The engine roared to life, and he sped away in a cloud of dust. That evening, Ethan sat alone by the corral, looking out over fields that were no longer his but had never felt more like home. Sophia approached quietly and sat beside him. Funny, he said, I thought giving away that land would feel like losing something. But it doesn't. Sophia turned to him. Maybe because it wasn't just land. It was a weight, and you passed it to someone who wants to carry it not for power, but for something good. He looked at her, then gently reached for her hand. Thank you for believing in me when I'd forgotten how to believe in myself. She smiled, fingers tightening around his. You were never truly alone. You just hadn't found the right people yet. As the last light slipped behind the mountains, Ethan realized something Liam would never understand. Sometimes the greatest inheritance isn't what you own, but who stands beside you when everything else is gone. A year passed. Blackbird Ranch, once 120 acres of aging fences and quiet grief, now stretched proudly across 2,175 acres of rolling pastures, clear streams, and endless Montana sky. But it wasn't the size that mattered most. It was what the land had become. They renamed it Sunrise Haven, honoring Ethan's grandfather's dream. At its heart stood the renovated barn, painted a warm chestnut brown, with a hand-carved sign above its wide doors, where the broken come to heal. It had grown into more than a ranch. It had become a sanctuary. Rescued horses now graze in the meadows. Veterans with invisible wounds came from nearby towns, drawn by word of mouth and the restorative peace of the place. Troubled teens from state programs arrived for 8-week sessions, but often returned as volunteers, calling it the first place they'd ever felt truly seen. Sophia, more confident and grounded than ever, managed daily operations with compassion and strength. Her laughter, once so rare, now rang across the fields as she taught riding lessons or helped deliver foals in the early morning hours. Ethan, now clean-shaven most days and moving with easy grace, fixed what needed fixing, from broken gates to broken spirits. He was never one for many words, but when a boy who'd run away from 7 foster homes asked if he could call him Uncle Ethan, he simply nodded and squeezed the boy's shoulder. As for Samuel, he surprised everyone by embracing his role as the ranch's elder statesman. He took up woodworking, taught horsemanship to veterans, and started a project he told no one about until it was finished. One evening, as the sun painted the mountains gold and lavender, he called Sophia and Ethan to the entrance of the main drive. There, mounted between 2 sturdy posts, was a hand-carved wooden sign, Sunrise Haven, Mitchell and Warner Ranch, where second chances begin. Sophia touched the sign, her throat tight. You made this. Samuel shrugged. Seemed right. This place gave us all another chance. Thought it ought to say so. Ethan looked at him. You sure you're okay sharing that name? Samuel smirked. I threatened to shoot a man for you, son. You're practically family. They laughed, but it was more than laughter. It was healing. A month later, on a perfect spring afternoon, Ethan asked Sophia to ride with him to Eagle's Point, the highest ridge on the property, where you could see clear to the mountains. There, beneath a solitary pine that had survived lightning strikes and harsh winters, he dismounted and pulled a small wooden box from his saddlebag. He opened it with steady hands to reveal a simple silver ring with a tiny inscription inside. Home is where you stay. Sophia's breath caught. I don't have fancy words, Ethan said quietly, but I have a clear name now, and I have a heart that only learned to beat right when I found you. She covered her mouth, tears welling. I don't need a church or a crowd, he continued. Just your hand in mine for as long as the sun rises over these hills. She didn't speak, just nodded and wrapped her arms around him. holding him close beneath the ancient pine as the wind danced through the grass that now belonged to both of them. Months later, their wedding was held in the meadow behind the barn. The horses gathered at the fence like curious guests. Samuel walked Sophia down the aisle with dignified steps and poorly hidden emotion. There were no tuxedos, no cathedral, just wildflowers, a hand-built arch of pine, and a gathering of people who had once been lost and now stood together as family. As Ethan spoke his vows, Timber barked once, loud and joyful, as if giving his approval. Sophia laughed through happy tears, and when they kissed, even the mountain breeze seemed to pause in reverence. That night, as stars appeared one by one across the vast darkness, Sophia and Ethan sat on the porch swing Samuel had built, wrapped in a hand-woven blanket, watching the land breathe beneath moonlight. "No more running," she said softly. "No more hiding," he agreed. She laid her head on his shoulder. Behind them, the house glowed with warmth. Inside, Samuel was teaching chess to one of the teens who now called the ranch home. Horses stirred contentedly in the pastures. A gentle melody drifted from the old radio on the porch table. "Do you think your grandfather would have been proud?" Sophia whispered. Ethan smiled. "I think he would have liked you more than me." She laughed softly. "Smart man." They fell into comfortable silence, not the kind that holds unspoken tension, but the kind that stretches like a peaceful hammock between two souls. In that stillness, in the heart of land that had witnessed sorrow, survival, and unexpected grace, they lived not perfectly, not without struggle, but fully with each other and for something greater than themselves. Because sometimes the most beautiful stories aren't built on wealth or power, but on the quiet moments that begin in stables, unfold on horseback, and flourish with love that asks for nothing in return. Just a place to belong, a place to begin again. Ethan hadn't just found shelter that stormy night. He'd found home, and Sophia hadn't merely offered a stranger a place to sleep. She'd given him, and herself, a reason to stay. In a world that often feels too rushed, too harsh, too divided, stories like these remind us of the quiet power and compassion and the extraordinary strength of love rooted in the soil of everyday life. If this story touched your heart, made you smile, or perhaps brought a tear to your eye, we invite you to pause and reflect. Remember that hope still endures, kindness still matters, and love can bloom in the most unexpected places. May we all find our sunrise haven, that place where we are seen, known, and welcomed home.